All right, so we're looking at 27, and I forgot to turn it on here. We just talked a little bit about, I talked a little bit about the second half of it, which I guess y'all get on Wednesday. But we're going to look at development, kind of walk through this kind of quickly. Not one of my favorite areas. Most people are going to get a lot of this on the nursing test. Okay, so the first big question here is talking about these different stages of development. If you look at this, prenatal, pre-embryonic period, embryonic period, and then fetal period. And we'll see as we look at this, we're going to see these are the big three here. So for the first week or two of development in the womb, this is called this pre-embryonic period. And you are really not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but you are a one cell entity with no nervous system, no brain, no nothing. Then you're 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And around the 64, you form this blastocyst or blastula. And so you're just a hollow ball of cells, right? I mean, literally forms a spear. Okay, and I think about a lot of these young folks don't know what a globe is, you know, like the globe of the earth. So you form a ball, but where the paper is the skin of the globe, that would be the cells of your cells. And so it's a hollow in the middle. And then things really start to kick in. You do this invagination. Remember, you're going to see that a tube starts to form, and that is the digestive system forming. Okay, and then, by the way, you don't jump that quick from that to that embryo. Okay, there's still a lot of development there. It's almost misleading, right? That picture. But week 3, you're still a ball of cell, and then you start specializing and form the rudimentary, the beginnings of the organ systems. Okay, so we call you an embryo from week 3 through week 8, and then you're a fetus from week 9 to 38. Okay, just some random stuff there on that. Now, my first actual question, though, was where does fertilization occur? And you would be surprised, most people miss this on a test. They don't remember this. I'm going to get to the picture. I like pictures, okay? So, and that's not the picture I was looking for. There. So, fertilization actually begins, you're conceived. Somebody wrote backseat of mama's truck, daddy's truck. That was a different story there. That might have been conception. I don't think that's conception. That was something else, okay? Copulation, okay, but you actually are fertilized in the fallopian tubes probably the next day after dad delivered sperm to mama, okay? So you're actually, it shows that. So you're formed in the fallopian tubes, and you spend about 3 days floating down that. So pretty slow little river ride, a little float. You've done the river ride at the water park, okay? And somewhere around day 3 of your existence, you get around 16. So look. Zygotes, 1 cell entity, 2 cell, 4, 8, 16 is morula, and then 32, 64, 128 is this blastula or blastocyst. And that is the stage that's going to embed in the mother's endometrium of her uterus. Okay. Now, how many of y'all have family members that have like really dangerous pregnancies that the baby implants too close up into the fallopian tubes? Then you would have a tubal pregnancy, and that could rupture and cause a lot of problems, right? And then another one, a lot of times, if the baby plants too close to the cervix, then that could make a woman have to be bedridden for like months, 4 or 5 months, possibly the pregnancy, right? So a lot of things can happen where it implants. If a woman multiple ovulates, right, then you can have 2 or 3 eggs coming down, and this is where most of our twins and triplets come from. And they do run through families. There's some hereditary evidence of that. So if you are a family of twins or triplets in your family, then there is that possibility that you could multiple ovulate. And it's usually run through the woman's family because men, remember, deliver 500,000 sperm right to every event. So there's plenty of sperm to fertilize the egg, usually a couple hundred at least make it up the fallopian tube. And so that's another interesting question. And so I think the second question asks, how are identical twins formed? And I think it's a pretty cool thought. So if a sperm fertilizes this egg, and then this first division right here, for some reason these 2 cells pull apart, then they actually become separate identical people. Okay, so they'll be genetically identical. Now, if y'all familiar with Siamese twins, right? These are identical twins that still are connected, and that's when the 2 cells don't pull apart completely. So they stay fused together, and there's been a whole lot of really, tragic things where these people share share a heart, share. Probably the craziest one was those twins, these 2 daughters, 2 girls that basically. They're still alive. They're in their 20s now, but they have 2 heads, basically. It's a 2-headed woman, okay? Long story short. Not really bad. But basically, they have 2 hearts, I believe, 1 lower anatomy from like digestive down. and one of them's married. Okay, it's kind of crazy, man. It's kind of, so they even had their own reality TV show, and it is kind of interesting that the doctors wanted to abort her when the doctor first saw that with the sonogram. They just thought, okay, messed up, you know, they're not going to live, and they even recommended that. I believe that's the story I've read, but that's pretty wild. And so I would think that since they have two brains, they have two souls. So how many of y'all got a sister? Any of you ladies got a sister? Would that be, do you think you could share the Lord name with your sister? That would be pretty bizarre, would it not? I mean, you're never alone, literally. So I don't know. So pretty wild. Y'all can watch some of their shows. I mean, it's pretty crazy about their dating habits and all this kind of stuff. Kind of wild. Okay,
and
yes, ma'am.
Individual driving tests, they're teachers now. Yeah, they each had to take their own individual driving test. Yeah,
and when one of them drinks alcohol, they're both getting drunk. So they share they share blood and all the same. Pretty wild. It's pretty amazing. There's probably been a lot of research to be done on how they coordinate walking stuff, right? But how that's able to work. So a lot of randomness, craziness there. And of course, that was the basis of the separate twins at birth, is the basis of that University of Chicago. I don't think I'm really talking about it here, but one of my favorite questions in biology is, and we have a couple chapters on development and genetics in our major book, but what do y'all think is more important, environment or genetics? Okay, and it's kind of almost like, basically, I mean, it's almost like, there's two sides on this. Some people think everything's in the genes, right? A few people, probably 10 to 15% of people. And then probably 10 to 15% of people think that genetics have anything to do with it. That you can, you know, and I hate to say it, but my wife's kind of in that group. She would go down there lying all those kindergartners today. She's been teaching kindergarten for 32 years and tells all of them everybody can be president, which is a lie. Everybody can be president. Now, did I say everybody doesn't have the potential to be president? No, I said everybody can be president because they ain't been for like 44 in 250 years, right? So we can't play the math game. But also, I don't think everybody can be NBA basketball player. I don't think everybody can be an Olympic swimmer. I think you got to have some what? Raw genetic material, right? To do that, but then how you do with what you get is up to you or your environment, right? And so, and what the study was really, y'all might find this with a little fun with this, but basically back in the 1970s, they were looking at this and they found out that since 1925 or 30, there's been like several thousand identical twins separated at birth and raised to different people, different families in America. There's more of a push now to keep the family together and stuff. But back then in the 50s, 60s, they just separate these people. And just so imagine there's an identical twin to you and they were raised in a totally different situation than you. So maybe your dad's a Baptist preacher in Mississippi, and then maybe the other one's dad, you know, is in the porno industry in California. It might be totally two different. So, you know, and he's a millionaire and your dad here makes $2 million a year. How would life unfold for these people? I mean, I'm just saying, I think it would be worth looking at. So they've gone back and done studies. I mean, they've done all kind of psychological profiles of these people. They've measured all their body parts. They give them all kind of tests, and they come up with a number about 55 to 60% of everything is already predetermined by genetics. Now, I would say that 40% though may be the difference between making an NBA ball team and never playing college basketball. You know, I mean, how much you work at, how hard did you work at, right? But I just find it very powerful that genetics is very important, and you need to think very hard about who you have children with. This is something you need to really think about, okay? Okay? Because you'll see some problems that kind of reoccur. Anyway, and I see in folks sometimes. But anyway, really fun stuff to me. But I think that's a question that comes up a lot about the identical twins, right? So identical twins are what? One sperm, one egg, first cells pulled apart, grow into two people. Maternal twins are just multiple eggs with multiple sperm. And they'll look a lot alike, right? Because that egg probably obviously came out of the same batch, and the sperm probably came out of the same batch. Now, once again, not trying to be ugly, but if mother has a boyfriend, two or three boyfriends, you can have children from three different fathers to your children, right? And you'd be surprised. I'd say 25% of people in this class think that women, that I've taught over 30 years, that women can only have their husband's child. And they obviously haven't been around animals or raised dogs or cats or something and know how that works, right? But anyway, we're pretty wild. All right. Then the next one it talks about here, it talks about, remember, as soon as it talks about twins here in our PowerPoint. Look at that. Look, it's a pretty powerful number here. According to CDC, in 2014, 1 in 8 couples in the United States have trouble getting pregnant or sustaining a pregnancy. And the number even higher than that is like 20% of couples never have the number of children they want to have. But 1 in 8 is still pretty high, right? That's like 12% can't get pregnant, can't have a baby. So a lot of money being spent on some of these, the in vitro fertilization and all that. I have friends of mine going through that right now, and it's very expensive. It's pretty painful. All the hormones they have to give the lady to try to get it to take. Okay, but that's assisted reproductive technology, several of those. One of them is artificial insemination, where they'll take the sperm and directly put it into the mother. The more current one is this gamete interfallopian transfer, where they take the sperm and egg from the husband and wife, pull your eggs out, make the baby in the test tube, and then they drop the developing embryo down in the fallopian tube, or even directly in the uterus. Because if you have endometriosis, it's scarring in that fallopian tube that prevents the baby and the egg to flow down. But this is really 5–10% effective. I mean, you can spend $20–$30,000 real quick and still not have a kid. And so I had a cousin of mine that did this for like years, probably spent $30–$40,000. And finally, they didn't want to adopt. They thought they were DNA, and I was telling them, man, hey, Robison genes could use some more genes, right? Robison gene pool could have a few more kids come in from another, that wouldn't get to us and mix it up a little bit, right? In my opinion, but they end up adopting, and the little girl ended up, it's kind of interesting. She is like the 10th, 11th grade now, but watched her grow up, and they've been very happy today. But they would have never had kids if they hadn't really committed to adoption. Was that 17, 16 years ago for my first cousin. Here's another one. The zygote is dropped down the fallopian tube. So they got several of these, and there's in vitro where it goes a little bit farther, and then it's dropped down into the mothers. I think before y'all die, y'all know your girls now have to go through pregnancy and all the stress that puts on your body. I think we'll just go to Walmart and you'll just see the babies growing in a glass bowl as you walk by, and you're like, hey, I'll come back and get you in 3 months, Robin Jr. or whatever. And I wonder if they love glass, like how they like to hug on the mother, but they just love to hug on grass. They go to window and just kind of start crying. They grew in the glass bowl.
You saw it where they've got these little tubes, they've taken mouse cells and got them fertilized, and they're putting them in basically a centrifuge so that these cells don't just stick to the side of the glass. Yeah, and
another one that we did in the laboratory, just a phone one, I found out a phone one, kind of a scary one. But they did make a baby, an embryo, zygote, split it up and made 2 copies, split that and made 4, and split that and made 8 identical twins, and then they killed them all. Just saying. But I'm just saying, but they can, imagine this. You and your husband, y'all, or you and your wife trying to get married and make a kid, and you do that, and then let's say something tragic happens to the kid in 3rd grade. Something terrible happens. Car wreck. Hey, you got little junior in the refrigerator, you go start over and do a better job second time. But when we all have a second chance, I mean, was there something? Does anybody have a bad situation? Like my dad beat me one time too much, right? I'm not sure he'd like to do that over, right? I'll do over, right? Okay. Anybody? I mean, come on. Y'all see your mom and dad lose it, do something really stupid one time, maybe with a 3-y'all?
There are more stories about that.
I know. I'm just saying, but we have that technology where we could put an embryo, a copy of you in a refrigerator, a deep freezer, and pull it back out, and have your twin born 20 years later for an organ or something if we need it. I'm not saying to replace you. I'm just saying, let's say you smoked some crack and needed a kidney or something. The perfect match would be you. So pretty scary here to me. Okay. Look at that. Talks about indicates birth rate per embryo transfer. Those numbers seem to be a little high. 38. So if you get in your late 30s, it's still like 38% the embryo taken. I think it may be worse than that. What I'm saying. Okay, what about HCG? Now they took out one of my favorite pictures that she didn't put in her book. But remember, HCG is called human chorionic gonadotropin, and that's the hormone that the embryo. Let me back up. But as it starts to grow right about day 7, it is going to release this hormone called HCG that then is going to go tell the brain that baby's on board. So we stop our cycle for 9 months, and it tells the ovaries that baby's on board. And this is the hormone that we're looking for in a pregnancy test. So if you've ever taken a pregnancy test, or you will someday possibly, then you urinate on this little stick, and it's looking for HCG in your urine. And when you go to the doctor, they're going to look for HCG in your blood. And so this is the hormone that it goes up, stays up for like 6 months of the pregnancy. So this is the hormone that triggers the corpus luteum to keep making progesterone and estrogen for 6 months, suppresses the endometrial lining from not having a period, and tells the brain baby's on board. Okay? It can be it's in the blood and in the urine. And they usually have a graph of that. They took it out. And here it shows development here, 2-week-old, 16-day-old embryo. The guy's like, and I'm just going to go ahead and open the can of worms. I know somebody's thinking it. I'm just going to go ahead and say, I like this. I mean, because I told y'all, maybe it's probably been a crazy year, but usually I start out the first week talking about, hey, we're going to cover in AP2, we get some controversial stuff we can talk about, right? And we ain't going to argue about subdivision, or, I don't believe in mitosis. I'm like, okay, you're crazy. Okay. But here's a good one. When's this a human? I think it's one of the great questions of mankind, right? And I don't know, I don't have a good answer. But I can tell you that my line in the sand has probably changed over time, right? Okay, I'm just saying personally, and if I ask that on test, it's an easy one. If you say anything from conception to birth, I can't really argue with you, right? Okay, even though I would probably talk to you, go talk to a therapist, you don't think it's a human in like 8 months, right? Because we can take them now up to what, 3 or 4 months early, and they can live. So they got to think something like that. But it's even probably before that. For me, I would say, if you try to filter out religion and just say from a biological point of view, we define life as really the EKG or in the brain activity, right? Because that's who you are, not in your heart, not in your liver, it's in your brain. So until we see brain activity, I don't think that's person, to me personally. And I would think the soul is put in there soon after that or something like that, right? I'm just saying, and I like to think there's a soul, you may not, that's okay, I respect you, still love you. But I'm just saying, somewhere along those development, but what's really bad is we let government get involved, and the government declares it a human in 3 months, okay? And this is just legislation with very little science, right? It's probably way before that when the brain's working. And I wouldn't even go with a heartbeat because you can still be alive without a heart, right? I mean, you can, the brain lives for a few minutes at least, maybe 10, 15 minutes after the heart stops beating. But anyway, so somewhere along, it just becomes a human. I still, argue, it's probably not born at day 16, but I think it's way before 3 months, right? Which would be what, day 90, right? Something like that. So we do need to, and I would say too, that it's not as simple as the date. Because how many of y'all noticed that based on the oven temperature, the cookies don't get done for 15 minutes? You ever bake cookies and it says, 10 to 20 minutes or something? Well, guess what? This ain't easy bake oven here. It's not like pop it and you get a biscuit in 15 minutes, right? Everybody develops differently. So probably where that brain activity occurs is different for everybody. Yes, sir.
Do they have a test or machine that they can see if there's brain activity, like at what stage?
I don't think they can. I think they can look for. I mean, we measure. I think this. I will do this. I mean, I'm not authority on that, but I do know that one of the things they look at when you go in, when you get pregnant, or very early on, they're going to do a sonogram, and they have a computer that will monitor the expected birth rate based on the size of the embryo. Okay, and they can tell, so they can tell a lot from the embryo, and I'm sure there's some way they can do that. I just not aware of it, and it is electricity being given off. But that's the thing. And so if you've ever been in the little measure, it'll say your expected due date is this, and then you can almost back up and tell what day it was conceived. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's almost picking a birthday is like the weather. You got a lot of leeway there, right? Weatherman misses it half the time, right? And we never, rarely, probably, I don't know, probably less than 5-10% or more on the due date.
Do you think that brain activity starts like 8 to 12 weeks?
It's somewhere between, I don't know, it's going to be probably the second month. I guess somewhere in there, somewhere like that. But it's different. I say, but everybody may be different. Well, one kid may develop way faster than the other slower. So, but it's way before 3 months, I think. Okay. And like I said, but I will say this: I'm kind of a moderate. I'm pro-life, but I think what I can't stand is hypocrites. I can't stand the group that is pro-life but against babies that my wife teaches. In Oakshire, in the poorest city, in the poorest district in Memphis. Well, let me tell you something. Them kindergartners are real people, and we're not going to argue about that. But we don't want to feed them. We don't want to educate them. They ain't got a coat. Ain't got shoes. Okay. So my problem is, we're the same people that don't want to fight over where it's a human, right? Don't want to help those kids that are humans, they're sure. So I've got a real problem. I'm kind of I get my preacher convinced that I'm pro-life or pro-food stamp. So we find out a better way, right? So we get a better way of doing it. The only way we can feed those kids that are in poor situations is give the money to the mother and hope somebody trickle down them. And I think it does, okay? Mostly. Now, I'm sure one of y'all smart people should go figure out a better way to do that, but until we reform that, I'm pro-life and pro-food stamp, okay? But because we know the little kids have got to be taken care of to me. There's just no doubt that they're real. Okay, that really happens. But somewhere in here, we need to have some of this. But I also I have a real fear of our government getting involved in our bedroom. And so I'm kind of not, I don't want to have the sperm police going around, make sure you didn't waste any eggs this month, girls, right? Because if you take a step back, and some of my very conservative people, friends, it's a person that one cell. Well, I don't think it is. Because I can make as good argument that sperm and egg are just sacred as one cell. And then that turns into, did you waste an egg this month, girls? Right? Of course, most of y'all probably did. Okay, but you got pregnant. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So I think you can be very careful about how you can go with that. Because there have been cases for women, get hurt or in a car wreck. Do we keep the baby alive, keep them alive on a machine so the baby can develop? Which I'm fine with that, right? So what about some woman smoking crack? Are we gonna put her in a coma and not let her be conscious for 9 months till the baby gets out? I mean, you see where this could go with legalities of that. So I just find that one of those gray areas that I try not to even guess where I think it is, but I do think it's before 3 months. Okay, and I get people mad at me. People mad at me today because I don't think it's one cell's a person. It's just me. But you make your own decision and then be ready to answer to that the guy on Judgment Day. I guess if you do have a baby and do something and then do something with it, that's on you. That's your business. But I'm not sure I want my government involved. Personally. All right, now very early on, look around day 16, we start seeing these 3 germ layers, which is on every ACT test ever given in America. They love these three germ layers, which I'll get to in a minute because we got to do the 3. My next question is the 4 embryonic membranes. Okay, these are also a lot on these tests. Now, there should be a picture over here after they give them all. I hate the way that book does it. But there is, but there is 4 layers that's kind of cool. There's this chorion that covers the baby up and produces this amniotic fluid, okay, that the baby floats in. And it is super important, right? Because it is a shock absorber for developing embryos. It's super important. There's also a layer of yolk sac in the baby and an allantosis right here. Now, in us, as you can see, I'm going to go back and read them off to you, but in a chicken, these are very important in the animals that lay eggs because the baby can't get out, right? The little baby don't pop out of the chicken, don't come out of the egg and go to the bathroom and go back in, right? And go eat pizza up buffet and crawl back in the egg and close the hatch down. So in chickens, the yolk is food, okay? And the allantosis is his porta potty. Okay, but it is kind of interesting what it does with us. And look, I'll back it up and look at what it does for us. So in us, the yolk sac, in many animals, is a nutritional source, but in the humans, it becomes the digestive tract and is the source of some of the first blood cells and blood vessels. It also produces first germ cells, okay, which eventually develop into ovaries and testes. So the yolk sac is a little bit different in animals, higher animals, but in chickens, it's food. But it's interesting, it forms our digestive tract. It still has to do with food, even in us. Isn't that kind of weird? I find that kind of interesting. The amnion makes this amniotic fluid that's super important because it keeps the baby comfortable, maintains what? Protects the baby from trauma, from drying out, maintains constant temperature. So when you go outside when it's cold or hot, the baby don't just instantly freeze or die. It allows for the free movement for the muscles to develop, right? Okay, it prevents the body parts from adhering to each other and growing together. And then this allantosis, look at this, forms the embryonic blood vessels that connect the placenta to the baby. But in the developing, in the animals such as the chickens and stuff, it is a waste product area. So it's their garbage can, okay, their porta potty, okay. But us, it connects to our umbilical cord, which is how we get rid of waste to mother, okay. And it also becomes part of the bladder in us. Okay, and that chorion is just that outside protective layer that forms this for the placenta also. And that's one they can pull in. So they can pull some of these out of the embryo and do a genetic test on that. And we'll see that as one of my questions at the end is chorionic villus sampling. Okay, and then there we go. There's what you look like in about a month. And I will give her a little credit here. Some of the folks get into play politics here. And I hate it. I'll just be honest with you. They'll just draw like drawings of the developing embryo. And I thought that was kind of like, that looked like human to me. And then some other books, I didn't bring one in my office. Each have one that had actual color pictures of embryos, real human embryos. And you can tell it starts to look human-ish here. And see how that picture has the 3D shape to it now? So you can see that you have arm buds, leg buds, and a tail bud forming here at 4 weeks. And that's usually when a woman might find out she's pregnant, right? Because you've missed your first period here. You've not have had a period at this point. Okay? And there's a table showing those yolk cells. That's when y'all list those. We'll maybe see some of those in multiple. Here's an interesting thing: ectopic pregnancies. So this is not one of those random things. This is where the embryo implants in the fallopian tube or in the abdominal cavity. There have been a couple examples that we've seen in America where the embryo fell out and attached to like a small intestine. and formed a placenta and got blood vessels to it and everything. Now the problem is, and I cannot overemphasize how most of those obviously look, 1 to 2% of pregnancies are ectopic, and almost 98% of them lead to the death of the embryo. Because it ruptures the fallopian tube, and that could even put the wife in danger, the woman in danger, excuse me. So you might even, I mean, that's a good reason to have abortion, right? So a lot of abortions, I mean, so I love everybody, but I hate my people. I just like the people who are so close-minded about things. Like everything's cut and dry. Well, let me tell you something. Everything ain't black and white. Okay, everything ain't cowboys and Indians, right? Okay, and here's one woman. Ectopic tubal ligation. The mother's wrist is in danger. Number one priority is got to be saving the mother's life, because there's nothing we can do about that baby. The baby cannot go 9 months in the fallopian tube. It is going to die. So do we lose 2 people or do we lose 1? Okay. Although I did see one where he did let hooked on the stomach, and the woman goes into labor, and they didn't catch it. They didn't. She had not gone to her gynecologist, whatever, her OBGYN. So she goes in, thinks she's going into labor, and she is going into labor, except it's the baby's in her abdomen. So they had to do abdominal surgery, and I think they used 20 units of blood. And they said the only reason she might live is she came in at a shift change, and everybody that was leaving had to stay. So they had like 20 nurses there, and just continually just give her blood, because the thing I'm trying to point here, and not doing a good job, is that uterus is really cool. The uterus is so cool. So once the baby comes out, you have to give birth to the placenta. But when that placenta breaks off, it clots. And that is one of the great miracles of all time, right? But if that don't clot, you're going to bleed death in like 2 or 3 minutes. Well, there is no clot in the placenta that doesn't exist in this woman that had the baby. There's no uterus in the stomach. So they had to go in there, take the baby, and had to tie off major blood vessels that had formed to the baby. And it was just a real touch and go. And she probably could never have another baby. But they had to take everything. They did a hysterectomy when it was in there. But pretty amazing. But that has happened where we have had people go full term outside the uterus, which is blows my mind. They can do that. But pretty well. Okay, and you can tell us otherwise pretty bad. Okay, then the development here, I didn't do a lot of this next little part because we just kind of looked other than 3 germ layers. Here you can see a little ball of cells here, but you can start to see these 3 germ layers, right? And here's 3-dimensional, kind of showing you what you look like. I'm looking for my germ layers. There we go. We should have a little table up here. Here we go. Oh, that's a good picture. I'll come back to that. But here are these 3 embryonic germ layers. I want you to know that they've probably been on every ACT test ever given, right? So, and in these early stages of development, you see ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm forming. And it's not color-coded like that picture was. And ectoderm, it forms the nervous system, the skin, and some of the glands. Mesoderm is skeleton and muscles and cartilage. Okay, and then endoderm is the digestive tract, look at that, thymus, parathyroid, thyroid, and all the glands in the digestive tract, and the urinary bladder, and some of the reproductive accessory glands in the reproductive system. So guts is endoderm, mesoderm, muscle and bone, and ectoderm, skin and brain, nervous system. And this is where these stem cells start to come from, right? So you can take an embryo very early on that's just started to form these, and theoretically we could grow spinal cords, we could put muscles in muscular dystrophy people, or someone who's lost their gut, maybe got some kind of Crohn's disease or something, we'd like to grow them in large intestine or something. So that's the idea of stem cell research, is to pull cells out of some of these early developing embryos and form these cell lines that we have that maybe someday can be used. And we haven't seen a big success in that. So we've been arguing about this for about 20 years about the potential for stem cells, but we haven't even got a double or base hit yet. I haven't seen any of it work towards a bit of practical, you could get a drug treatment from that. I may be wrong, but I haven't seen that yet. This is a pretty cool picture. Here's what you look like in 4 weeks. I think it's a better picture of 3D imagery. It's 6 times power, and you can see that you had a tail. The somites it's going to be some of the muscle and bones. And here's what you look like at 8 weeks. So this is where I think it gets kind of scary, because 8 weeks would still be within 3 months of legally an abortion is legal, and of course that's an aborted embryo at 8 weeks. And that starts to look like a human, does it not? I've seen videos of these guys sucking their thumbs, or going away from the needles during abortion. So once again, I don't know, kind of scary here, but you can see that's starting to look very human, and that's still got another month of development before you can even still do a legal abortion. And the other thing that I think should be just said about this, just in general, is not all doctors are morally honest people. Okay, shocker. Okay, so I would give y'all some big advice here. Just telling this to Mr. Dunny earlier this day. You need to find you a doctor you trust, like I hope you know a good mechanic. So if you don't know a good car mechanic, y'all need to find somebody you trust to work on your car. You better find a good doctor. You better find a good plumber. Okay, honest plumber. But if you thought you were brought here on earth to do abortions, then you could say that maybe it's not as old as it says it is, and we think it is. You know, so that's still got a lot of gray area here, right? Where you could say if a woman comes in and says, "Hey, I'm a month pregnant," maybe she's 2 months pregnant. She says she's a month pregnant, but then that gives her another 3 months to get another 2 months, so she can still get an abortion, right? And so there's a lot of gray area there, and it's just very hard to predict. We can't measure exactly how far the embryo developed. That's what I'm getting at. But anyway, neat picture there. I'm glad they put that in the book. Then 9 weeks into birth. Let's blow through these, and then we'll pick up those genetics on Wednesday. We already talked about that. There's the embryo developing about 12 weeks. Blood vessels forming. Here's another couple of cool things we see here. There is fetal hemoglobin that grabs the oxygen better than our regular red blood cells, and that's how it's able to get oxygen into the baby. Nothing much. I'm not going. Here we got. There you are at 3 months, and here you are at 5 months. So you see quite a bit of development here. A couple of things. There's a couple of weird ones here. I put this as a question number 6. There's a hole between the right and left atrium called the foramen oval, and it closes about a month or so before you're born. Now, why would we have a hole in the atrium? Well, there's no reason for the blood. It's a great question, and I'm sure God will give us a course on AP, the 20-year course on AP in heaven. But there's no reason for blood to go to the lungs during the embryo, because mothers, you get your oxygen through your placenta, through your umbilical cord, right, and that's directly connected to the mother. So the right ventricle from above the lungs is just practice right, bringing it back. So a hole in the right atrium will let the blood bypass the lungs, just going into the left and be pumped to the bottom. It closes off. And how many of y'all had friends or know somebody that had a baby born with a hole in the heart? I've heard this all my 30 years teaching. Well, here's the hole. If you got a hole in the ventricle, you're dead. Okay? It's blowing out in your eyeball. So the hole is between those two atriums that then close off properly. And so sometimes they'll catch it really early on, and then they'll monitor it, or in worst case scenario, they go in there and have to sew that thing up on day, in birth. And I don't even think they can do it before you're born now. They can go into the womb and close it. I had a little girl that had this, and they didn't catch it. And she got about 10 or 12 years old and turned blue due to oxygen deprived. And so they went in and fixed it on her, but it started her growth tremendously. I mean, she's almost like, it's like 4'11", and her brain seemed to be, she's very smart, so she got plenty of oxygen to her brain, but her body was stunted because of the lack of oxygen to her body. Pretty wild. The other one here is another blood vessel we have that connects the pulmonary trunk to the aorta. Once again, bypassing the what? Sending blood to the lungs, right? So ductus arteriosus that closes off, and that sometimes could form an error, because that's a blood vessel that closes off an extra blood vessel you got. I think we have a picture showing it here. Look, you can see it here. So here's the foramen oval, look, the hole between those atriums. And then here is the ductus arteriosus. Right, where's it at? On the top up there, you can see it there. Ductus, yeah, right there. So there's the blood vessel that closes off. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pretty well.
Did you remember what was the fossa ovalis?
Yes.
In the heart, that's your foramen ovale.
What's left there?
That ligamentum, what is it? Arteriosa was originally the ductus.
Now, one thing that they didn't do here that a lot of the book used to have, and I was a little disappointed in it, is at this point they used to have a video in the whole book that showed of how exposure to different things, to women's exposure to certain drugs during development can cause lots of problems, right? There was a drug that we did not approve in FDA, but approved in Europe for morning sickness, and it stopped the production of blood vessels. So a whole generation of children born in Europe were missing arms and legs. They literally would have like a hand where the arm is. And they threw that drug away, because it's what we would normally do. And then about 5 years ago, maybe 10 now, I'm getting old, a drug company bought the rights to it, which they thought, here, you can have it. And then they used it as a cancer drug to stop tumors from growing. Because tumors have to have blood vessels. That's brilliant. So it's actually used now as a cancer treatment to stop the spread of a tumor. Pretty brilliant. But there are different drugs that are very dangerous at different times of development. And the nervous system is almost always almost the whole 9 months is in danger of things hurting it. Okay, nothing much here. I'm going to ask fourth respiratory stress. This is a big one here, where you know kids have to be given surfactants, right? That we give the premature babies, right? And that's also the SIDS, sudden child death. You know, we don't know what that is causing that exactly, right? Okay, in pregnancy, childbirth, I got nothing here. Thing. It does have a huge effect on the woman's body, right? As y'all have heard of that. Let's get the preeclampsia, and then we'll get there. There's the HCG, and here's a couple other melanocyte stimulate hormones determine skin color, chorionic releasing hormone, other hormones that have an effect. Just talk about different things in development. I'm not going to ask any of that. Did pull a question off preeclampsia. This is a really weird disease. Check this out. Approximately 10% of women, pregnant women in the United States, get this very bad condition. And basically, look, it involves your body rejecting the baby's blood. Okay, look at that. Causes are not known. Here we are, 2021, don't know. But it involves insufficient blood flow to the uterus or a problem with the mother's immune system, which then attacks the fetal cells. Leads to fetus being deprived of oxygen, mother develops anemia, and mother gets high blood pressure and get high levels of protein levels in her urine. And guess what? The only treatment we got is get the baby out. Birth. Get the baby out. And then mother gets normal. I actually had a lady come speak that's working at the University of Mississippi Medical, working on treatment for this. So we have a lot of preeclampsia in America, Mississippi. And so we may have a treatment coming out of that, but basically your body is rejecting the baby's blood or whatever, okay? And your immune system almost turns on the baby. And the treatment is take the baby early, and the mother gets better in just a few hours, a few days.
My sister had it with both of her pregnancies, and she delivered 6 and 7 weeks early.
Isn't that wild? And they don't know what's called that. Means you just, it's almost like some kind of fantasy thing, nightmare, you know, I mean, really. But that's one that we really spend some money working on, because there's got to be something going on there we just haven't figured out. Because it's very rarely that we say something like that. We don't know about this disease that you've already experienced, and one of us already experienced with her sister. 10% of America. Wow. It's pretty wild when you think about it. Okay. Undiagnosed can lead to fatal conditions that can cause seizures, the mother and baby both at risk. The one treatment is deliver the baby. Crazy. The false labor, uterus has to, the cervix has to dilate 10 centimeters. That's pretty wild. Okay. Baby has to turn nose toward mama. You know, got the little flipperooski down there, got to dilate. Look at that. So nose got to go down towards the digestive system, towards the butt. And if you don't make that twist, then you're a brief birth, right? And now we can do C-sections and all that now that we couldn't do back in the day. Brief birth is butt first. And then C-sections are pretty common, right? Get that baby out, get that alien out. And I have had several of my friends, had a co-worker that retired that was real pro, have your baby at home with a midwife and all that kind of thing. And I'm just still old school. I think, I don't care how you do it, but I would do it in the hospital. Because if that placenta don't stop the bleeding, you're going to bury somebody. You're going to have a death quick. Okay. And you're going to have time to get from your house or your swimming pool, or somebody won't have a swimming pool. That's kind of cool, the water birth. But I would still be close to the hospital. Okay. We'll just stop there. Let's call it a day, and then we'll pick up. I'll do the next thing on next class. Y'all have a good day. See y'all next week. So look at these, mark on these when y'all want to do it. When y'all want